This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Frustrated King Island residents are petitioning to secede from the state of Tasmania following ongoing issues with the island's vital freight service. After months of uncertainty on a long-term solution, the government is now considering a purpose-built ship, but some locals believe they'd be better off in Victoria.
It's the picturesque island northwest of Tasmania, but King Island's seclusion has also been the thorn in its side after months of uncertainty around a long-term shipping solution.
Yesterday I had 6 or 7 meetings with different groups on the island.
Fertilisers and other goods bound for the island have been held up in a backlog, while farmers say they've been unable to get their stock to market. Frustrations boiling over for some residents petitioning to secede from the state of Tasmania.
We've had it. We want a fair go, and we believe if we move north to Victoria, we will get a fair go.
The petition catching the attention of some Victorians, its Premier also on board.
Well, look, I think every Victorian who plays golf and loves cheese and beef, they'd be all for this. I am.
Fantastic. Yeah, bring it on. It means we can go there easier, right?
All right, let them there. Let them come over. Let them join us.
Constitutional legal experts say the process to secede from a state is extensive. It would require the consent of the Tasmanian Parliament, along with the majority of its voters. That's along with consent from Victoria's Parliament and its voters, while also requiring consent from the Commonwealth.
Whole of Tasmania, including King Islanders, I don't think would support losing King Island to Victoria.
The King Island Council has laughed off the petition, while the government is now investigating a purpose-built ship for the island, which could be up and running within 18 months.
We know that effectively Reen Hitting sat on his hands for 3 years when it comes to this situation. Now Jeremy Rockliff's been sent to King Island to try to clean up Minister Hitting's mess. It's just not good enough the way this government has treated the people of King Island.
Jacqueline Robson, Southern Cross News.
The Tasmanian government is pledging almost $7 million in additional school resourcing ahead of next week's state budget. But Labor claims Tasmania has already drawn the short straw in education following the federal government's changes to funding arrangements.
It's another drip feed announcement ahead of next week's state budget. The government promising to include a $6.9 million additional school support package to be rolled out over 4 years.
In the form of social workers, speech pathologists and school psychologists to support our teachers.
A welcome resource boost of up to 14 full-time positions, aiming to improve student outcomes through health and wellbeing.
They've got anxiety, or they're worried about where they're sleeping that night, or they're worried about what's happening at home. There just isn't space in their head to learn.
If we support kids' health and wellbeing, they will be much better equipped, they'll have better attachment, they'll have better mental health.
But the state opposition claims the announcement is a backtrack on previous budget savings measures.
It really only seeks to replace some of the money that the government took out of our education system in its first budget. We think this measure will go some way to replacing those cuts, but not far enough.
While the Deputy Opposition Leader believes the state will have to pitch in a lot more to make up for cuts made in last week's federal budget.
And that means if they don't put $85 million extra into schools over the next 2 years, Tasmanian school kids will be worse off.
The state government denies they've been shortchanged by the Commonwealth. Jacqueline Robson, Southern Cross News.
Hobart is the second most expensive city to rent in the country, according to a housing affordability study released today. The report has prompted calls for the state government to pledge more funding to the housing sector in next week's budget, amid concerns rising costs could leave many at risk of homelessness.
A third of weekly income on rent might seem excessive, but that's what many are forking out to keep a roof over their heads.
Which won't leave them much to pay, for example, winter heating bills, and at the end of it they still don't have a house or flat to show.
The story gets worse the lower your income.
The latest rental affordability index shows prices have skyrocketed in Hobart, Launceston and Devonport in the last 6 months. For single and couple pensioner households, costs have reached the point of being severely unaffordable.
When people are putting constant housing risk of high rents, It leads to really, at the worst, people being at risk of homelessness. So we're very concerned about that, and those numbers aren't decreasing.
According to Tasmania's peak homelessness body, our most vulnerable are being forced out of living in inner city areas. It wants the government to commit more funding for affordable housing in next week's budget and for it to consider more long-term solutions.
Where Optum is not very good transport, employment opportunities. So we have this pattern of our whole social networks being affected by the rental market.
We simply need to increase the supply of properties that people on low incomes can afford to rent. That's not going to happen by the private sector unaided. It needs government involvement.
In a statement, the government says it has done enough, providing $73 million for the affordable housing strategy and extending the $20,000 first home builders boost. Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
A coronial inquest has found the death of 62-year-old Anne-Marie Woolman-Jarvis in July 2015 was preventable and resulted from an undiagnosed subdural hematoma. Mrs Jarvis was taken to the Royal Hobart Hospital after having a fall at a building site. Coroner Rod Chandler found staff at the hospital failed to identify the intracranial hematoma on the CT scan. The report also states the substandard level of care provided by the ED and the medical staff insufficiencies contributed to her death. The sentencing for convicted wife killer Klaus-Dieter Neubert has been adjourned again today. Chief Justice Blow telling the court he did not want to deliver a murder sentence via video link. Neubert was found guilty of murdering his wife Olga Neubert late last month. He was also found guilty of causing grievous bodily harm to Mrs Neubert's friend Josephine Cooper. He's due to be sentenced in Hobart's Supreme Court on Monday. A UTAS study is using controlled fires to investigate the behaviour of rare marsupials. The fuel reduction burn also analysing the way feral cats use fire to find food.
It's not your average research project, but its findings will assist in better understanding the rare Australian batong.
They're a rat kangaroo, which is an ecosystem engineer, and it helps with ecosystem health and sort of how vegetation is spaced out within a habitat, because they sort of dig and then spread fungal spores around.
The UTAS PhD student says the pint-sized creatures react well to fire, using it to find their staple food of truffles. Today's State Fire Management burn also a chance to investigate the increase of feral cats.
Cats can travel up to 20 kilometres. Well, they'll just move their range and focus on a burn patch, and they'll feed there for about 2 weeks, taking advantage of, picking off small mammals.
Tasmanian farmers own around 40% of our state's forest landscape and are being encouraged to assist our ecosystem in reducing fire fuel.
It's really important that doing these fires to give the community the confidence that we're doing the right thing. We can say that this is based on science, it's based on research.
The UTAS group has spent around a month monitoring this 15-hectare block, and in that time 3 batongs have been detected and their movements monitored.
I've been looking at where my females that have been using this patch have gone since they've been burning, and good to know they're still alive and beeping, and they've just moved out of the patch.
Rihanna and her team will collate the data from her studies this year, helping keep these guys around a little longer. Jessie Gilmore, Southern Cross News.
A new program is being considered for repeat drink drivers, which could see Tasmania be the pilot for an Australian first, a non-traditional court model dedicated to dealing with the issue. A study released today from the University of Tasmania considers whether the current sentencing model is adequate or whether the state should open a specialist problem-solving court.
A significant proportion of offenders have coexisting issues such as mental health issues, alcohol abuse and substance abuse. And these factors are probably help explain why traditional criminal justice responses aren't effective for these offenders.
It's a cohort of offenders who regularly reoffend despite the traditional sentencing options that are available to the courts. There are a number of people who, despite the imposition of those sorts of sentences, continue to offend.
Public feedback is sought from the community, government and stakeholders over whether the therapeutic justice response should be implemented. As we go to air tonight, a who's who of Tasmanian football is descending on Crown Palladium in Melbourne for a gala dinner celebrating the state's contribution to the game. Joining us live from the event is Tom Johnson. Good evening, Tom. We understand tonight is about recognising how Tasmania is shaping the AFL.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. It's all about recognising those local players, those local coaches who are making their mark on the game today, but it's also about acknowledging Tasmania's influence on the game in the past. Now I'm talking about those classic State of Origin clashes, the Hall of Famers we've produced, and those iconic names, Baldock, Stewart, Hudson. They're all going to be here tonight in some shape or form. Now, I'm joined now by the AFL Tasmania CEO, Rob Auld. Rob, can you tell us, what does tonight mean for Tasmania?
So tonight's a marquee event for Tasmanian football, no question about that. We've got all of the dignitaries in the room, all of the great champions of the past, everybody that's made Tasmanian football such a strong influence on footy nationally.
And what does this opportunity bring for the people to talk directly to the heads of the AFL at a national level?
I think it speaks not only to the AFL executive, just speaks to the broader football community. Reminds everybody how strong Tasmanian football's been, and I think it's a great way to propel us into the future.
And for the players here tonight who are currently serving in the game, what does this mean to have this recognition of their contributions?
So I've spoke to most of the players, both recent but also current, and they're buoyed by the fact that 500 people can mobilise themselves to come to Melbourne and celebrate Tasmanian football. It means so much to them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rob. And Joe, as Rob touched on before, there are lots of dignitaries coming here tonight. We're expecting around 500, so it should be an excellent evening, and we're going to bring you full coverage tomorrow night. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Tom. It's going to be a very special night indeed. Tom Johnson joining us live from Crown Palladium in Melbourne. The Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre has launched its first translated episode of animated national TV series Little J and Big Cuz. The show is currently running in English on NITV and is the first cartoon TV series to feature Aboriginal children.
It's about Little J and Big Cuz, and they live with their nana out in the bush. They have scenes where they're at school, where they're going through the bush, where they're at the beach, and get into a bit of mischief.
Aboriginal community groups around Australia are now in the process of translating episodes into different local languages.
I just think it'll be a really good resource to show families and children and, you know, the coming generations of, you know, what we can do with our language.
The episode will air from July 2. Taswater Chairman Miles Hampton turned the first sod for a $50 million sewerage plant upgrade in Kingborough today and says the company is looking ahead rather than focusing on the government's proposed takeover. The project will almost double capacity for the Blackmans Bay plant from servicing 36,000 to 60,000 people.
The Kingborough municipality are one of the fastest growing municipalities of the state, and it's really important that we don't just plan for today, we plan for tomorrow.
You'll see a lot of property developments, particularly in Margate and Snug, that will follow through, whereas at the moment there's really no capacity to take those homes.
All sewage from Margate, Electrona and Haldon will be pumped into the new facility, proposed to be finished by August next year. Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The Australian share market has closed lower as the battle between the Turnbull government and the big banks over a proposed $6.2 billion levy on Australia's 5 biggest financial institutions continues to weigh upon investor sentiment towards the financial sector. The ASX 200 index has dropped by 64.5 points. Short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 74.42 US cents and 66.91 euro cents. As we said earlier in the night, the inaugural celebration of Tasmanian football is about to begin in Melbourne. We can tell you a big centrepiece of the night will be Tasmania's 1990 State of Origin win over Victoria. A game with extraordinary pride on the line, Tasmania beat the powerful Big V after being excluded from the Interstate Carnival only 2 years earlier. Players from that game are in attendance at tonight's gala dinner, which is the first official function of the newly created Tasmanian Football Foundation. And we'll bring you full coverage of the event in tomorrow night's bulletin. The Launceston Tornadoes are hoping their home court advantage will get them over the line as they go up against ladder leaders Dandenong Rangers on Saturday. Meanwhile, the Chargers will play without star forward Tom Garlop, who's out injured for at least 2 weeks.
It'll be the side's most challenging match yet. The Rangers won the championship last year and are the team to beat this season, with only 1 loss so far.
They work well together. A lot of them have played together before, so they know each other quite well. So yeah, they're just a tough team.
They bring to the court a number of players with extensive WNBL experience, but the Tornadoes are prepared, coming off a convincing win against the Melbourne Tigers. Lauren shined as captain, scoring 20 points, 8 rebounds and 10 assists.
I think it's definitely good for our confidence to get a tough win away. So I think we're coming back, feeling confident, and it was probably one of our most comfortable wins so far this season. So I think we're all feeling good, and we'll be ready for the weekend.
To the men's competition, and the Hobart Chargers will be without key player Tom Garlop, out with an ankle injury.
So it'll be a good test with Lewis Thomas coming in for his first home game to replace Tom, to see where we're at. We've got 3 really tough games coming up at home, so we'll have a fair indication of where we sit.
While the Lady Chargers are also bracing for a strong match against the Rangers.
Statistically, we're actually quite similar. I think the main differences between our two teams are the amount of offensive rebounds that both teams give up. We seem to give up a little bit more than they do, and they're shooting the ball a lot better than us at the moment as well, so that obviously leads to more scoring.
The Chargers will face off against Dandenong on Friday night in Hobart. Jessica Moran, Southern Cross News.
Good evening. 12 degrees in Hobart today and 14 in Launceston, Burnie and Devonport. 17 degrees was the state's high at Friendly Beaches and Flinders Island. We had a low of -4 overnight at Lyowini, warming up to 9 degrees. It was 16 at St Helens and King Island, 15 at Low Head, 12 at Strawn and 9 degrees at Grove and Medina. The satellite shows extensive cloud spiralling around a low in the Bight, with a middle to high level cloud band extending over eastern South Australia, western New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. A massive low cloud affects far north Queensland, but the remainder of the mainland is mostly cloud free. Over Tasmania we can see streaming middle to high level cloud. Tomorrow, a ridge of high pressure extends over Tasmania while a low weakens in the Bight. A trough extends from this low over South Australia, Western Queensland and the Northern Territory. Variable winds about the coast, 5 to 15 knots, tending southerly at 10 to 20 knots about the south through the morning. Swells building to 3.5 metres in the east and 4 metres in the south. Cloudy in Hobart tomorrow, looking at a top of 15. A possible early shower for Cygnet, 14, New Norfolk 15. Morning fog for Launceston, warming up to 18. Devonport, a partly cloudy 17 degrees, 16 for Campbelltown. Burnie and Strawn, both partly cloudy and 17 for Smithton also. St Helens, partly cloudy 17 degrees, 16 for Swansea, Fingal 17. Taking a look further ahead through the week, Friday will see showers developing about the Bass Strait Islands and along the east coast, extending across the north and increasing to rain later in the evening. Rain on Saturday extending throughout the state in the afternoon, with possible heavy falls across the north. And Sunday, more rain about the east and south, clearing early in the morning, with showers persisting about the north and west. Now let's take a quick look around the country tomorrow. A mostly sunny 25 for Perth, showers for Sydney and Brisbane, a sunny day for Darwin and Alice Springs, and Melbourne partly cloudy with a top of 20 degrees. And right now, all around the state, pretty much, it's 11 degrees and cloudy. That's all of tonight's weather. Thanks, Jo.
That's all from the news team for now. Thanks so much for your company. We'll see you a bit later with updates. Bye-bye.